Coal is, well, not only is it, but it has been very important to North Dakota's economy in a lot of ways. I think a lot of times when we talk about the economic impact of coal, we talk about, the jobs in central North Dakota and western North Dakota, people working at the coal-fired power plants, people working at the coal mines, all of the commerce that those folks drive with their paychecks and just living out their lives in this wonderful place we call North Dakota, and the resulting economic impact that has, but also the fact that cheap and reliable electricity is a pretty good deal for North Dakotans. We have long struggled to attract businesses to come to our state, people to come and invest in our state and work in our state. That's a discussion probably for another podcast. But one selling point we've always had is cheap, reliable electricity, and that's because of coal. But it's been tough sledding out there for coal in recent years. Most of those headlines have been national in nature, but in the last year or so, they've really started to come home even here to North Dakota, where we have very efficient coal operations. I think, as most of you probably listening to this probably know, North Dakota coal is very efficient because we basically built the power plants right on top of the coal mines. There's really no transportation costs. The coal comes straight out of the mines and into the power plant and gets turned into electricity. It's a good thing. It's a very efficient thing, but even here in North Dakota, we haven't been able to necessarily weather those headwinds well entirely. We've had some stations, smaller stations, closed down. Right now, Coal Creek Station, and just as we're recording this, I wrote a piece about Coal Creek Station potentially being shut down or sold to another buyer. Its owner, Great River Energy, announced earlier this year that they were facing some economic difficulties. Again, that's the largest coal plant in North Dakota. And so that's the environment that my guest, Jason Bohrer, he's the president of the Lignite Energy Council, that's the environment into which they've released a movie about coal. You can find it at coalmovie.com. It'll be available coming May 1st. So if you're listening to this, it may not be May 1st yet. You can watch a trailer there. It'll be available on May 1st. I was lucky enough to get to pre-screen it. For the most part, I didn't get all the way through it, but it's a great video. It really tells the story well. I hopefully opens some eyes. It cuts through, some of the politics and the debate that we have about energy sources. But Jason, let me ask you this first. And again, it's coalmovie.com. You'll be able to watch it there starting May 1st. Jason, first of all, tell me, why'd you make this movie?
I think to continue to tell the story that you just began. Sometimes the most important things that you see in life in North Dakota elsewhere are the things that you maybe never think about. How often do you provide a second thought to what happens when you flip on that light switch? And yet our whole quality of life, our business, our economy, jobs, billions of dollars, it depends on this source of electricity. What we've found is that you get very far outside the 100-mile radius around, or 50-mile radius around the coal mines, people know a lot less about them. And what they know, they learn from flawed sources. So we thought, let's build a product that gets into the hearts and minds of the people who work in coal country. Let's talk about, not just, hey, here's what the technology does to take this out of that. Let's talk about the lifestyle that coal provides. Let's really talk about the love that these folks have for the land that they live on. And let's provide a different perspective of the coal industry to North Dakota.
I think that's so good. Most of us, like a lot of North Dakota students, in the fourth grade went down and toured Coal Creek Station, as it happened, as a part of a class trip, and we got to see it all. Most of the rest of my experience, and obviously I write about this stuff with public policy and everything, that's my job now, but most people, about the only time I ever think of coal is when we're having a political debate about it, or if I'm driving on Highway 83 from Minot to Bismarck and I'm looking over and seeing the big coal plant, or if I'm heading, maybe further west out towards Beulah and seeing some of the other plants that are out there. That's about the only time. And it's really sort of out of sight, out of mind, which in a lot of ways almost kind of makes coal a victim of its own success. It's been so cheap and so reliable for so long people just kind of come to take it for granted. Like, you flip on the switch, the power turns on, my electric bill is completely reasonable. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff if I'm the average citizen.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point, which is you actually shouldn't spend a lot of time thinking about electricity, because that means
What do we say at sports? If you notice the umpire, something's gone wrong, right? I mean, if he's doing his job right,
yes,
you shouldn't be talking about him at all, or the ref, or what have you. Whatever. I'm a baseball fan, so of course umpire for me. But the referee or whatever, like if he's doing a good job, you don't talk about them. They're not the point. But coal's been doing its job, right? I mean, coal prices are steady. Coal's cheap. It's plentiful. The power plants, I mean, obviously sometimes there's power outages, you know, whether it's bad weather or what have you. But for the most part, I mean, I come home from work, I flip on the switch, my light comes on. When it gets hot outside, my air conditioner comes on. Stuff just works.
Yeah, and that is the perfect analogy. And, you know, what we see is people start thinking about what it means to their lifestyle, what it means to the way they want to live their life, and all of a sudden, wow, sometimes it clicks for them, and they're like, I have to care about this because other people are making the decisions about my energy usage, and it's going to impact my life in a really negative way. So this movie helps people connect those dots and say, everything you may have learned about coal from the New York Times is wrong, and here's what the real story is.
It really is, because when we have a debate about this stuff, it's really sort of become ideological, right? The thing is, I don't like it. I mean, obviously, I'm a conservative guy, and I don't think there's anything wrong with philosophical debates or ideological debates. But I think the partisan divide, the whatever you want to call it, the divide in this country has become so pronounced that we form teams on issues like where our energy comes from that we really don't need to have philosophical teams. I mean, we absolutely should have a debate about energy policy and what rules we need to have around coal mining and what rules we need to have around turbines. And we have a political process for that, and we have regulatory agencies for that, and that's all well and good, and I'm happy to have that debate. But this has grown beyond that, where it's almost become like, if I'm a Wind fan, I'm a Red Sox fan, and if I'm a Coal fan, I'm a Yankees fan, and we're just supporting our teams, and we don't spend a lot of time talking about how we can work together or what's the best path forward. I think that's really unfortunate. I think it obscures a lot of the factual parts of this debate that we could be having.
You're absolutely right, and it happens very quickly. It happens more with more contention now than it used to. It used to be Republicans and Democrats could sit in a room and talk about energy policy, and there'd be folks on both sides who were pro coal, and that's not the way it is. And this type of divide and partisanship happens so quickly now. This is my favorite example. Look at people wearing masks in the pen right now. That's not it shouldn't be a political issue, but within a matter of hours, that becomes a partisan issue. And there's a lot of gray area there. And there's coal as an energy source there's a lot there for Republicans and Democrats to like, and they don't have to fight. But this partisan nature that we've developed encourages the fights. That's what moves dollars into these huge environmental industrial groups. And that's what moves people to the polls, is the fight. So what is lost in that process is smart energy choices.
It was really interesting. One of the most interesting parts of the film when I was watching, and again, it's at coalmovie.com. It was the CEO of North American Coal, and I apologize, I am completely forgetting this guy's name now, but
J.C. Butler.
That's him. Yes. So he's on there, and he's talking about something that he likes to do, and he'll take somebody out on a tour down some country road where a coal mine was, right? So this is after the coal's been mined and the land's been put back, and he'll say, okay, on one side of the road we mined, and on the other side of the road we didn't mine. Which side is which? And he says that people can't tell the difference, or if anything, mostly they get it wrong because they're looking at the side that wasn't mined, not realizing that when we do reclamation, coal mining reclamation, they actually improve the land, right? We'll improve drainage issues. So, if there's like invasive plant species, those get out of there. The land's better. And so I don't know that a lot of people know that. As a matter of fact, I had a friend from out of state one time. We were driving down through central North Dakota. I was pointing out, I was like, oh, all this land. I said, when I was in high school, this was all dug up. This was all a mine. He's like, this was a mine? This rolling, sort of pastoral North Dakota countryside was a coal mine? I was like, yeah, we put it back. That's. I don't think people understand that we can do that. You can mine land, and it comes back, and it is literally better than it was before after we've mined it.
Yeah, that's one of the frustrating things that we specifically deal with in North Dakota, because we have this great reclamation program, and yet any story that's ever written by Eastern media will have pictures of mines. They might not even be from this country. Yeah. They certainly won't be pictures of mines in North Dakota, but they're interested in disinformation about the coal industry. And why would you live near a coal mine that looks like some of these pictures of disasters that are presented by the media? And then you see the video, you see the coal movie documentary, and it's like, no, these people live there. They care about the land. This is their family's property. They've got friends, family, relatives living on these coal mines. Of course they love the land.
Well, yeah, it's not often. It wouldn't be atypical to see a coal miner who maybe is also doing some ranching on the side, maybe doing a little farming or something on the side, or is from a family that farms or ranches or something. That's very typical. And who makes a living off the land? Who cares more about that land continuing to be usable than ranchers and farmers who literally have to grow things in it or graze animals on it? So that's an important thing. Let's talk for a little bit about what coal is facing, because every time this comes up, it frustrates me, because I think the headwinds facing coal have very little to do with market realities. I think they have a lot to do with the government putting its finger on the scales in favor of certain types of energy over others, and it's creating ripple effects that are turning into real choppy water for the coal industry. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's fair. I can't say there's not market forces at work. There's been huge amounts of basically free natural gas that have been put into the system and started converting to electricity. But I mean, you go back to your sports analogy. If our side has 10 players, their side has 20 players, and you get one holding call that goes against you. I'm mixing analogies here, but that's not the problem. The problem is the other team has so many more players, and the government is letting them use all of those players. They've enacted so many subsidies or incentives for an incoherent reasons that it makes it impossible for coal to continue to compete.
Do you think that, because one thing that I struggle with all of this, and you're right, it is market forces. Cheap gas has overall been a great thing. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from our friends in the oil and gas industry, but the thing is that the oil industry is very volatile, and a lot of the gas that we use is a byproduct of oil production, right? I mean, it is. Not all of it by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of it, particularly in our part of the world. And so what happens if oil production stops? Because I got to tell you, a lot of the same people who don't like coal don't like oil either.
Yeah, that's the other part of that. The funniest thing is the people who are so loudly telling everybody, oh no, it's the cheap natural gas that is killing the coal industry. They're the same people who want to kill cheap natural gas, right? It's all a smokescreen from their side.
So, what happens? One way or the other. And listen, the oil industry is... Some pretty bad things have happened to the oil industry over the last several weeks. We've all been watching the prices. They've been tanking. I think the last report I saw from the Department of Energy, we have ceased production on a number of wells in North Dakota equivalent to about 455,000 barrels a day of production. That's getting up close to half of all of North Dakota's daily oil production. That's a huge amount, and there's a lot of gas that gets produced at those wells. What's going to happen to natural gas prices? We don't necessarily know. The oil and gas markets are extremely volatile. Coal is not. And so I've been saying over and over again, there's not a lot of long-term thinking that's going on right now. I think there's a lot of short-term thinking. I think there's a lot of short-term thinking and thinking, the last 10 years ago or so, yes, we've had very cheap natural gas. But the oil and gas industry is volatile. We have no guarantees that that's going to continue into the future. Also, the renewable energy industry is built on a lot of government policies which could go away, which could cease to be. And then you get into the fact with reliability. It really worries me that people aren't thinking about this long term. I think in the renewable industry, we have a lot of people trying to crowd in on these government subsidies before they go away, right? Because that's what it is. I mean, when it expires, if you get in and you qualify for the credit, you get it for I think it's like a decade. You get it for some length of time for your wind farm or whatever. They're all crowding in, trying to get in on those before they go away. And then we're also building up all this natural gas capacity where we're going to power our homes with natural gas when the natural gas markets are extremely volatile. Nobody seems to be thinking long-term, hey, what happens if these markets crash? What happens if renewables can't replace baseload power? I don't think that they can. Who is thinking about this stuff? I'm looking around and I'm not seeing anybody, Jason.
Yeah, there's very few people thinking about long-term, and it is to the detriment of society. And where you'll also appreciate the kind of inconsistency or scattershot approach is there's no longer a coherent rationale as to why we even have certain subsidies. I can support a subsidy for emerging technologies that have a national security or, in the national benefit for companies So yes, if we want to help a nascent technology develop like we did with the wind industry 50 years ago, the nuclear industry 80 years ago, we can help those technologies move forward out of the lab into the field. But once they get into the field and they're commercially sustainable, then the government backs out. But what you're hearing from a lot of the renewable industries, whether it's solar, whatever, is, hey, we're competing with coal. We're beating coal in the marketplace. And then out of the other side of the mouth, they're saying, by the way, keep this handout coming. Keep this handout coming. Our projects stop without these handouts. Well, that's an inconsistent message. And there's no cohesive rationale for the federal government to just throw money at projects that are commercially viable.
What's your outlook for coal in North Dakota? Because I think there's, again, you started this off saying that you get 50 miles away from the coal mines. A lot of people don't know what's going on with them. And so I think there's a lot of people in the public right now who are thinking that there is a grim future ahead for coal in North Dakota particularly. That, we're looking at what's happening with Great River Energy and Coal Creek Station. We look at the plants that have already been closed down in North Dakota. And I realize some of those were kind of older, marginal plants. But Coal Creek is very efficient. It's one of the most efficient coal plants in the country. It's also our largest coal plant. And the company that owns it's talking about, potentially, I guess, talking about either shutting it down or trying to sell it to somebody else. What's the future of coal look like right now?
The future's more in doubt. The future's more in doubt now than it was even 5 years ago when we saw the Clean Power Plan, because the economics have shifted so drastically. And when I say the economics have shifted drastically, I'm talking about cheap gas and subsidized renewables. So when you hear from anybody, market forces have turned against coal, the reality is that's true, but market forces are dictated and they're driven by skewed federal policies that completely uneven the playing field. So while it may be true to say, hey, market forces are turning against coal, it's also true to say the reason market forces are turning against coal is because the government has such a heavy thumb on the scale. So what that does to the future of the coal industry in North Dakota is makes it uncertain. Where it does, if the market is turning against us because there's this thumb on the scale, what happens to that thumb? Does it keep pushing down harder, like what people want to happen in the Green New Deal? Or talk some sense into the government and say, hey, let your thumb off. And instead of a government-driven market force, let's have a more of a free market-driven force that rewards coal for things like resilience and reliability and the ability to sign a 30-year contract. So the future of coal is uncertain, but on a level playing field, it's really bright because we can compete and we can win, and we're cleaner than ever, and there's some good things going on the technology side.
What do you hope people who watch this film, and it's about 30 minutes long, it's great stuff. It's Governor Burgum's in it, lots of people, frankly, more interesting than the politicians, the people who actually work in the industry. I say that no offense to Governor Burgum or the rest of them, but I really liked hearing from the workers, the people who work in this stuff every day and whose job it is to mine the coal and use the coal and to do it responsibly, and they care about their jobs and they care about the land. But for the average person watching this, what do you hope they take away from it?
The importance of coal to the communities, the fabric of North Dakota. You see the shots of the coal bowl and the love that these folks have for the industry, for the environment, and want viewers to take away from that this is important. This isn't just your light switch, but it's your light switch and real lives. There's real people's lives at stake here. And they're at stake not because of some speculative market-driven whatever, but they're at stake because our government has made poor choices. And we need to care about that more than we do.
Jason, thanks for your time. Once again, it's coalmovie.com. It's going to be up May 1st, so if you're listening to this before May 1st, there's a trailer there. But bookmark it. Come back to it later when it's up. And you'll be able to watch the whole thing. I've seen the whole thing. It's worth your time. It's only about 30 minutes. And heck, you're at home. You've probably reached the end of Netflix by now at this point in the quarantine anyway. So you're probably looking for something to watch. And I tell you what, if you live in North Dakota, or even if you live well outside of North Dakota, this is a good thing to watch because coal matters here. Like Jason said, I think it's a part of the fabric of our state, a fabric of our society. And there may come a day where some other things other than coal make sense. I don't know, but that day is not today. And I think like Jason said, our government's making some poor choices in this regard, and they ought to make better ones. Jason, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.